What's up guys, DevBird here, and today I'll be talking to you about tweening. So what's a tween, you might ask? In this context, we're simply referring to coding our own animations. So you might be wondering, why would you even want to code your own animations? Unity already has their own built-in animation tools, so you can simply just animate whatever you want, just using the animator, like I did here. And I'll tell you why you wouldn't want to do this. Is because there's two big reasons why. The first is that even if the animation is finished, so I'll show you here, even when it finishes, it's still being called. And so this could actually slow down your game if you have a lot of objects that have animators on them, because even if they're not doing anything, they're just finished like this, they're still being called. And so that could hit your performance a little bit. And then the second big reason is that imagine you have a bunch of little objects that you need to animate. Having to hand animate every single one and add an animator to it and do the animation manually can be very, very tedious. So let's see how we can achieve this, or how we can fix this problem using code. So first of all, we're going to want to create our own little script here, or a folder first. This is called scripts. And you'll be able to use this Tween Library in any project that you need it on. So you don't have to worry about this being like, oh, I can only use this Tween project in this project specifically. No, you can use it in any project. So you're going to have this little Tween Library that you can import to any project that you need it to, and it'll work just fine. And so our goal is to recreate this little animation that we made. I'll just show it to you again. We're going to recreate this animation through code. And so let's see how we can do that. So first of all, we need to create a script and call it Tween. And we're just going to open that up. Alright, so we have our Tween class here, and we're going to delete all this stuff here. And we're going to delete the model behavior, and we're going to make us a public static class. And so this script is just going to sit in our Unity project, and it's just going to act as an access point basically to other scripts and other functionality, so that we don't have to have a bunch of references. This is just going to handle all of that for us. And so since we don't need to do anything here right now, we're just going to go back to Unity and create the scripts that actually handle the moving and the fading for now. And so first we're going to create a Tween data script, and let's open that up. So the way this is going to work is that this is going to be a script, and we're going to be adding this script onto the objects that we want to animate as a component. And so basically this script is going to be kind of like the base, or we're going to be inheriting from this script. So we need to ask ourselves, what do all other Tween classes are going to have? So we're going to have something called Tween Move and Tween Fade, and maybe some other stuff that you'll have in the future. Maybe you want to create your own. And so what do they all have in common? And when we think about this, we're thinking about animations, right? So what do all these animations have in common? Well, they have a start time and they have a end time. And so we're going to create a public float and call this elapsed duration. And this is just going to track the amount of time that has passed while the animation has been active. And then we'll make another float and call this total duration. And this is going to be our endpoint. And so when we add this script onto a component, or onto an object, I should say, we're going to make a update function, and we're going to make it a virtual void. And this will allow us to override it in our other functions. And why is it giving me error here? Oh, we need to make it public. So make a public virtual void, and it will allow us to override it in our other scripts when we inherit it from it. And we're just going to say elapsed duration plus equals time.delta time. So this will track the elapsed time. And so if 1 second goes by, then the time delta time will say 1 second has gone by, and it'll make it equal to that. So we can track the amount of time that's passed through this little line of code here. Cool. And so if the elapsed duration is greater than or equal to the total duration, that means that the time is up. We don't want to be doing this anymore, so we're going to enabled dot false. And this basically means this should be the end of the animation. And then so we're going to stop the animation once we reach the end of the duration. And we're going to be defining the total duration in another, when we call this script. So now that we have like the base finished, we can move on to actual functionality in another script we're going to create is called Tween Move. And all this is like pretty simple stuff, so you'll find it very easy to create your own types of animations. And so we're just going to create a move animation. Maybe you want something like a scale one or something like that. But anyways, so we're going to be inheriting from the tween data we just created, and so that way we have access to everything here. And when we want to move an object, we have to think about what things we have to have, or what information we need to know. And the information we need to know is a start point and an end point. So we're going to create a public vector3. This is going to be our target position. So this is the position that we want to end up at. And then we want to create another vector3 and call this the start position. And now, so now we have the two vital pieces of information we need to know. And then we can override the update function in the tween data script, but we want to call the base, so we always want the original stuff to happen. And so because we're calling this, that means that all this is also happening. And the next thing we need to do is make a float and call it % equals to the elapsed duration. So we access the elapsed duration because we're inheriting from tween data right over here. So we have access to everything inside here. And so we can call the elapsed duration, divide it by the total duration, and this will give us a percentage of the amount of time that has passed. And so if, let's say, 5 seconds have passed and there's 10 seconds total, this is going to be 0.5. And so this will go from 0 to 1, and once it hits 1, that means that we've reached our final destination. And so we can make the transform dot position. Because we're adding this script onto the object that we want to animate, we can just change the transform position of the object that this is on to a vector3 dot lerp, and we're going to lerp the start. We're going to throw in the start position, and then the end position, which is the target position, and then the %. And so what does this mean? The lerp basically just interpolates between 2 points. It basically just means that it's going to make a smooth transition from the start to the end point, and to give that like little animation feel to it, it's just going to smooth it out, and so it's not just a linear going from point A to point B. And then the % goes from 0 to 1, and so that ensures us that by the end of the total duration, we're going to reach our endpoint. And so this means that we don't have to do something like checking for the distance between the object and the endpoint to know if we reach there. It's always going to reach there because we have this % here. And so if this is a 1, that means that the transfer position is at the target position for sure. Alright, so now that we've done that, we can actually call this function here, or call this class here, through the tween. And so we're going to simply now create a public static void and call this move. And the reason I like to make it static is because it's in a static class. So if I didn't make it a static, it would give us an error. If you're putting anything in a static class here, it always has to be static. And so we're going to want to throw in some parameters, and we're going to need the game object that we want to put this component on. So this is going to be the target object. And then remember, we need the start position and end position. Well, we can already get the start position, so we just need the end position. And this is just the target position. And then we need the target duration. So this is how long we want the animation to go on for. And so now that we have that, we can create a variable and call this object to move. And we made equal to target object dot add component, and we're going to add the tween move component. And then now that we've added the tween component object to the object that we want it to be on, all we have to do now is set the all the different parameters within target move. So what do we have? We have the target position, the start position, and the total duration. And so let's go through all of them. So the object to move, and so because we set a reference to it, we can just call object to move now. And this is going to be referencing the object with the script on it. We can do the target position is equal to the target position that we pass through. And so notice I put a little underline or underscore here. And this lets us know that we need to, that this is a parameter. So I like to do that just to mark it as a parameter. And so that way I'm not accidentally doing like two target positions on the same one or calling the same thing, because these two have the same exact name. So that might be confusing. So I have this little thing here to make sure that I don't get confused. And so let's just go through all of them. So we have target position, and then object to move. We need the total duration. Make it equal to the total duration, or I have it as target duration. Let's just change that to total duration, just so that there's some consistency here. So we have total duration, target position, and then we also need the start position. The reason why I said we don't actually have to throw in a parameter to do the start position is because the start position is already set. All it is the target position's current position, or target object, I should say. Target object, I'm going to transform the position that it is currently. And so that lets us know what the start position is. And then now that we have all this, we can call this in a different function, or a different method, I should say. And so let's create a test script. But first, let's get rid of, well, I have to get rid of this, get rid of the animator and whatnot. So if I hit play, nothing will happen. And so, just to prove that I don't actually have the animation component on it anymore. So it's not going to do anything. And so let's make it do something. So I'm going to create a test script, let's call it test. I'm going to open that up, and we're going to call the tween function. And so let me show you how super simple this is. We're going to call tween. So on the very start, we're going to move this object. So tween.move. And so I need a reference to the object I want to move. And so let's just create a public game object. Let's call this the, what is it? Circle? Circle object. And let's look at the parameters that we have to throw in. So we need the targets, the game object. So let's say the circle object. And then we need the end position. And so this can be a little tricky because, well, we can do this in a lot of different ways. But in this way, like, you can have a transform and set it to that. That's position. I'll do both. I'll do one first where I'll just move it to the right at some random location. Not random, but I'll show you. So let's see a vector 3. So it wants a vector 3 here, so let's say new vector 3. And let's make it 0. Oh, I hope this thing's original position is 0. Let's just make its current position for the X, or actually no, for the Y. So let's not have the Y move at all. So that'll ensure that the Y position is always the same. And so now we can just edit the X position. So let's move it to the right. Transform.position.x. Let's say plus 50 maybe. I'm not sure how far that'll go. And it also wants the total duration. So let's say for 5 seconds. So it should get from where it needs to go, or from where it is to where it needs to go in 5 seconds. And so let me hit play. Oh wait, I didn't add the test script. So I'm just gonna add the test script onto the main camera because why not? You know, you don't actually want to do this, but because this is just a test, let's just do that. And so we need to put the reference to the circle object in the test script. Oops, I made a minor mistake where I did not set the correct variable here. So you see I have 2 target positions, but what I wanted to do was the start position. So now that that's fixed, let's go back to our scene here, and I'll hit start, and it's going to go from where it is over to the right, and you'll see that 50 is pretty low. I was actually way off. So let's just change it to something like 500. Maybe that's too much. Let's see. Maybe hopefully it'll go like somewhere over here. And yeah, that's about right. And if you notice you see that there's nothing here. I'm gonna hit play, and I'm gonna stop it. And you see it adds the Tween Move component here, and it has the target position, it has a start position, and this is the duration. And so it always will get there in 5 seconds. So you see that this is how much time has passed. And hit play. Right when it hits around 5, it's gonna stop. And so let's say I want it to be much faster. I could half this, make it 2.5, and it's gonna get there twice as fast. And look, it gets to the exact same spot too. And so that's how you know it'll always get to the spot that needs to, and as however long you want it to. So you can make it really short, make it really long. It'll always work. And so now that we have the moving, we need to actually fade it at the end. So the tricky part is that it happens at the end, which means that we have to add something else to this. And let me show you that. Alright, so let's go over to our Tween data. And that little thing that we need is an action. So at the very end, we're going to call a new action. So let's create a public action, and you're going to get an error saying that this action doesn't exist. And so you can hit Alt-Enter, and then you hit Enter again saying using system. It'll say you can use it now. So we have to be using system up here to make sure that we can access the action class. Then we'll say on complete. On complete. And so this action is going to get called when the animation, or this is what we want to happen, when the animation is over, and when the elapsed duration has equaled the total duration, we're going to call the onComplete function. And funny enough, we have it right here. And so we can just put this right over here on complete, and we're going to hit question mark invoke. And so the reason why we're putting the question mark there is because not all the time you'll have an action. And so this question mark makes it so that this is only going to invoke if onComplete is not null. And so that can be really handy because you don't want to always have to have onComplete equal to something, or you don't have to say if onComplete is null. You can just do it this way, and it's a lot simpler, a lot shorter, easier to read. And so now that we have that, we still have to make this equal to something somewhere. And so in our tween, we're going to create a new parameter and make this an action. And again, we get to using system, so let me just hit action and using alt enter to using system. And then we'll say underscore on complete. And then, so the thing is that we're not always going to have an action, so we make it equal to null. And so what this does, well, let me just get rid of it real quick. So let me go over to my tests, and it's going to give us an error saying, hey, we don't have the onComplete equal to anything, so we're going to give you an error. And so this is not going to work. But if I go back over to my tween and make this equal to null, this is going to be the default value. And so I'll go back over my test, and it says, hey, it's equal to null, so it's equal to something, so we're fine. And so that will make the error go away. And so we're going to make the object to move dot onComplete equal to underscore onComplete. And so let's just go over to our test, and let's actually make it equal to something. So let's make it equal to, well, how do we make it equal to something? So we make a parentheses, and we use the lambda expression, which is equal, and then the, what is this, the greater than sign? Or is this just an arrow? And we're going to make it equal to another function, and let's say we can do another tween move actually, since that's the only thing I really can do. Tween move, oops, not tween move, we want tween.move, sorry. Tween move, and we're going to move the circle object again, and we're going to move it to something random. I don't really care where it is. Let's say 0, 0. It's going to go back home to 0, 0. Well, actually, I don't even know where that is really, but then we're going to make it do that in 5 seconds, and that'll be it. We won't do anything else. So basically, this is the, when the onComplete is called, it's going to do this. And so let's go over and hit play again. So it's going to go over to its thing over here, and it's going to go back over to 0. And it's now over here. But there's something a little off about this, and if you see here, we have 2 tween move components. And this just seems very inefficient, so imagine if you called this every, like, I don't know, you did this a lot, you'd be accumulating a lot of tween moves, right? And we don't like that. We only want to have 1 tween move. And so how can we fix this? So let's go over to our tween, and instead of making equal to add component here, well, we will, but let's just edit this a little bit. So let's rewrite this. How can we make this not add another add component every time? We can just simply check if there is a tween move and use that instead. So what we're going to do is make it equal to target object. Target object dot get component dot tween move. So we're going to get the tween move component here, but it's not actually what we want to do. We want this to be the condition. So this is just checking if we have a tween move. So in order to do that, we can hit we can make it a not sign or add exclamation point, and this checks if there is or is not a tween move on the object. And then we do question mark to make it an actual condition. And so what follows this is if it's true. And so we're going to make this a target object dot add component tween move, or if there is a tween move on it already, then we can just simply get the component. And so let me just make it a little more digestible here, and I'll explain. So these two things, this right here and this right here, are the exact same thing, but one is just kind of smaller, easier to read to me, and it just like takes up less space, but they are the exact same. And so this is just the condition. If this is true, then it does the first one. If it's false, then it does the second one. And so that's all that's happening here. And so if there's no tween move on the object, then we're going to add one. If there is one already, then we're just going to get it. And so that solves our problem where we don't have to constantly use a new tween move. Alright, now that we have this, we can simply make the object to move dot enabled equal to true. So now that we've gotten the component, so if we add the component, then we don't need to do this, but it doesn't really like hurt performance too much. So if we get the component and it's not active, then we can just make it true. So this ensures that the component is always active when we call this move function. The next thing we need to do is we need to reset the elapsed duration variable. So we're going into this imagining that we're using this again, or that we have to use, or we're getting the component and it's already there. And so we need to make object to move dot elapsed duration equal to 0, so that we basically refresh the elapsed duration and we don't have the old one. So this is a little quick reset on the elapsed duration. Make sure you always have this on your other ones too. And so now that we have all of this, we can go over to our tween move, tween data. So we're in tween data here, and the reason why we're here is because there's a little bit of an issue. So we don't want to invoke the action first and then disable it, because this way what happens is we go into the second action, the second tween move, and then tween move says okay, let's enable it. And then what ends up happening after that is the enabled equals false. So it's going to turn it on, then turn it off. We don't want to do that. So we're just going to simply swap the two and make enabled come first, and then we invoke the action. And with all that, we can go and play. And what's going to happen is that we have one tween move, and when it reaches the end here, it's just going to reuse the same tween move and go back to whatever position it needs to go to. And then it's going to turn it off. And so that way we never have to have multiple tween moves onto one object. It's going to reuse the same one. And now we can move on to the next part, which is the fading part. So let's create a new script and call this tween fade. Tween fade. And we're going to simply get rid of all this, and we're going to want to inherit from tween data, just like we did with tween move. And we're going to want a couple of things. The first one is a image. So tween fade is only going to work with images, or basically images refers to objects with the image component, which is usually on the UI or the canvas here. So this thing has an image. So this is not going to work with, I don't know, like a cube or something that has a renderer or a sprite. You'll have to make a very specific one for that. So maybe in yours you can call this, instead of tween fade, you can call this like tween fade UI, to make sure that you know this only works with images. And so we can say image, and we don't, it's gonna not know what that is, and we have to be using UnityEngine.ui. and this is going to be the target image. And we want to float, call this target alpha. And so we're going to be fading, which means that we're going to want the alpha of the color. And then we want the start alpha. So this is very similar to how we're going to do how we did the Tween Move. And so we're going to do the public override update. And we're calling the base update. And then we're going to get the percent again. Elapsed duration divided by total duration. Alright, so now all we have to do is get the color component and then fade it. And this is pretty simple to do. So first of all, we're going to cache away the temp. We're going to call this temp color or temp C. We're going to call this TC for temporary color equal to target image dot color. And now we can do target image dot color is equal to a new color, and then we can use the TC dot R. And so you see here that we want to maintain the RGB values, and we're just going to change the alpha value. So TC.RGB and G and TC.B. And so this will guarantee that the RGB values are always the same from what the original color is, so you're not accidentally changing the colors somehow. And then after that, we're going to alter the alpha. And we're going to do the same thing, except we can't use vector 3 because this is not a vector 3. Instead, we're going to use mathf.lerp. And we're just going to changing one value, one specific value. And this is, we're going to do the start. It's going to be the exact same thing. The start, then the target, alpha, and then the percent. And so now we can, this is basically all we need. And now we can go over to our Tween, and we're going to set it up the exact same way. So let's set it up, and we're going to say public static void, and call this fade. And maybe in yours you can call it fade UI if you want to make sure that you know what it is. And so I'm going to be using an image, and again we have to be using UnityEngine.UI.image. So we're going to want the image, and this is the target image, and we want a float, and this is going to be the target alpha. And then we want another float, and this is the target, or I should say total duration. And then the same thing, we want action, and this is going to be on complete equals to no. So very, very similar stuff to our move. And then we're going to do the same thing. Instead of object to move, we want to do object to fade. Object to fade is equal to, and we're going to check if the target image.GameObject.getComponent and we're going to do the tween fade. And then we want to know if it's on there or not, so we're going to have a exclamation point here. So if there isn't one, we're going to add one. So we do the question mark, and we're going to do target image dot game object dot add component. We're going to add the tween fade, and if it already exists, then we can simply just get that component. So target image dot game object dot get component tween fade. So exact same thing going on here. I forgot to add a little parentheses here. Alright, so now that we have this, all we have to do is set all the variables. So first we want to make the elapsed duration equal to 0, and then we do the target alpha equal to the target alpha, and then we can make the object to fade start alpha equal to the object's current alpha. So we just do target image dot color dot a, and this will give us the start alpha, or the current alpha that it currently is. And the next part is that we need to do the total duration, or the total duration. So object to fade, total duration. This is how long the animation is going to be. You guys know the drill. And the very last thing we do is the object to fade and the action. On complete is equal to on complete. And I believe I got everything. Let me just double check here. Oh, we need to make the object true. Enabled is equal to true. Oops. True. Let's go over to our test. And in our test, instead of doing tween move, we're going to do tween fade. And we're going to get component the image. Oops. We need to use the image component. Forgot. Okay, so now that we've gotten the image, we need to do the target alpha. So we want to fade it to completely clear, which is going to be 0. So 1 is opaque, 0 is completely transparent. And then the total duration can be like 2 seconds. And maybe like 2.5 seconds. So the F just marks as a float. And we don't want anything else to happen afterwards, so the action can just be null. And there's actually one thing I forgot to do, which is make the target image, which is like the most important part. So let's do object to fade dot target image is equal to target image. So I'm not sure how I forgot to make the most important part here, but let's go back and let's play this, and it should go to the right and then fade out. And see here, fading out, and it's completely gone. And so that's basically the same thing as our original animation, where it went to the right and then faded out, but we did all of this through code. And so now you can simply, now that you have these two functions, you can add as much as you want, whatever kind of animations you want, and you can simply just use that. And you see in my test, instead of having to make an entire new animator, make the animation, and add it to the object, and then call that animation through code, I simply just have to do this. I just say, hey, I just want to do a tween move, throw an object, throw in the position that I want it to end in, the duration, and if I want something else to happen, then I can just add this tween fade. Look how short this is. This is only long because I decided to make it this long, but let's say I wanted to cache the position away. Let's say transform and position. I could say something like delete this and position, and there's a little bit going on here. There we go. And then I'm going to go to my test. Let's say create new object, and then make this the end position, and move this over wherever I want. And it's going to go do the exact same thing. And look how short that was. So this is all I had to write, and it did it. So there's actually one very, very teeny tiny thing that I want to do before I end this, and that's I somehow made the word elapsed duration and misspelled it. So let's go over to our tween data. So elapsed, I'm pretty sure is spelled with the P first and the S. So the way you can easily fix this is hit Control RR, and I can just go in and reverse it, so there's the P and the S, and save, and everywhere where this is referenced has changed. So you see elapsed duration is now correct in every script that I wrote it in, or that references this specific one. I hope that I wrote it correctly in other ones, but I'm sure that you guys caught that and wrote it correctly. So that's going to be it for this video. This is how you move it to the right, and this is how you fade. Again, this only works for images. You have to create your own for every single type of fade that you want. I hope that this helps, and I'll see you guys next time. I'd like to thank my special patrons Mohammed, Magello, Xavier Herbert, Van Helen, Seymour, Castor, Pale Blue Dot, and Polybius. Thank you for being my patrons and supporting this channel. If you'd like to support my channel, go to patreon.com/devbird, and I'll see you guys next time.